don't limit yourself by your own preconceived notions of how you should be doing it. Give yourself freedom to actually be creative, not just with your camera, but with your business.
It's smart for all of us to think through, how do I grow as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, as an editor? And part of that growth is trying things.
We've really learned that if we create a family environment and we care about the people that are working for us, that they will be loyal to you, and it'll be a lot of fun, which I think is important to me.
On this episode of the podcast, we're talking about team building and project management. Lots of good gold nuggets in here. You're gonna learn how to efficiently manage multiple projects while maintaining high quality standards. You're gonna discover some strategies for training and developing a diverse team of filmmakers, people that are brand new and people that might actually might not be brand new. And then you're also gonna understand the importance of clear communication and structured tasks in ensuring team success and business scalability. Let's get into it. Welcome, my friend, to the Grow Your Video Business show. My name is Ryan Coral. I'm your host. I have the massive pleasure of being able to hang out with you today and introduce you to our amazing guest. A lot of good stuff in this conversation, a lot of things that have been helpful for me as I've grown a team and have, I think, tried to get back some of my own sanity, because you start adding clients to what you're doing. You get multiple projects, even from one client. And organization, staying on top of administration type stuff can drive you crazy. And then it's like, how can you hire anybody that's gonna add to the chaos if you don't have processes and things in place? So I think you're in for a real treat today. If you're in a spot in your business where you feel like you're lacking community, you're lacking other people that are going through some of the same things that you're going through, because let me just tell you, some of the biggest struggles and frustrations that you have in your business, and I want you to think about what would be the top 2 things in your business right now that you're experiencing. You're not alone. I've experienced probably both of those things, and the people in the community that I have cultivated have experienced those things. I am reopening the doors to the 10X Filmmaker group very, very soon. And if you haven't been around for a while, this might be the first time you've ever heard about it. Or if you have been around, we launched it a year and a half ago, and we have not opened the door since. So there are lots of new cool additions that are going to be a part of the community, but it starts with community. It starts with a group of people that are wanting to grow together, that are wanting to learn from me and from each other. We have expert masterclasses, so I bring in my amazing network of friends that are doing incredible things in their business that aren't necessarily video related at all, but things like marketing and sales and operations. I'm bringing people in to speak, to teach, to help us. We have a whole library of past master classes, things like how to grow your email list, how to do cold call outreach, how to hire an editor. So there's a ton of resources and material and things that you get immediate access to once you become a 10X filmmaker. So go join the waitlist, unless we've already opened the doors. I don't know exactly the date that this is coming out, but if you go to studiosherpas.com/10xfilmmaker, you'll get all the details and sign up to the waitlist if it's currently a waitlist. And we're gonna open the doors. I'm gonna make some very exciting announcements very, very soon. So do that. And I'm so grateful that you are here. Let's get into today's episode. What's up, friends? Welcome to another episode of the show. With me today is filmmaker Jason McCutchen. He is a wedding filmmaker. He's a YouTuber at Wedding Film School, and he's also a fellow podcaster. Jason, thanks so much for making time to be on the show today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So, Jason, what right now is getting you most excited about the work that you're up to?
You know, for us, we live in the Northeast, so we kind of are lucky enough to have like 3 months off every year. to kind of get recalibrated and get all set up. So that's the season we're in right now, of like dealing with just getting prepped for a busy wedding season with over 200 gigs that we're planning for. And so that's what I'm excited about, is I'm ready to get started.
Yeah. Yeah, that when we were back in the day when I was doing wedding films, it was so nice in like November, December to feel like, okay, let's wind down, let's catch our breath, let's think about marketing for the next year, let's do all of our editing. It was a nice rhythm. And then, transition into corporate filmmaking. It's like, there is not really, middle of the summer, I guess a lot of people in business are like, hey, like, let's talk about this come September. But there's no like hard stop like there was back in the wedding film days. So that is nice.
Yeah. It's interesting when you have a business that gives you a break to think about your business.
Totally. Which is really, really good. So 200 weddings, no big deal. Tell me, you kind of mentioned before we got rolling here, you were in primarily corporate commercial filmmaking and then transitioned to weddings, which I think is so unique because that's not the story of most people that I talk to. A lot of people, it's the complete opposite. Yeah.
So we started our business probably like 12 years ago, and we had weddings from the very beginning, but it was just small, like 8 to 10 weddings back when the 5D Mark II came out and everybody was trying to do weddings, right? And so I was like, I can do that. That's easy. I can do that. So we went and bought some cameras. I was kind of wrong, but we did it, and we did it relatively successfully. And of course, we started getting like commercial nonprofit work and like a lot of puff pieces, and that was like actually financed our business for a long time while we were building the wedding business up. And, we did web design. We've done like every single thing within the marketing world in addition to filmmaking corporately. So for a long time, it was probably 50% of our revenue or more. And, I'm not sure exactly when the turn was. It could have been like 2018, 2019. But it became pretty obvious that like weddings are a product, right? That can be reproduced week in, week out. And we were like, what if we just built like teams around this and we just went bigger, like always go bigger, always more. And like, cause we understand that industry. So we were able to build it up, and eventually like we're shooting 8 weddings on a Saturday, and I was like, we just don't have time to do this commercial stuff anymore. Like we have this brand and we have this product. Let's just keep selling more of it.
And brings you to today where you got like 200 in the books for next season.
Well, 2022 or 2021, we did 210, 2022, we did like 230, 2023, we did 196 or something, but we raised our prices like 20%.
Yeah.
And then we have on the books 170. We'll book more as the season goes. And so like in the last 4 years, we've done almost 1,000 weddings. In the high-end luxury space, not in the entry-level market.
Yeah. So what is it? What's the average sale for wedding film?
Probably our cross-brand average is $5,500.
Okay.
But we have 3 brands. We have like a more entry-level brand, which is like a $3,000 average sale. Our core brand, which is our legacy brand that we started with, is probably a $6,800 sale right now on average. And then we have our luxury boutique brand, which we're probably 12 to 14 grand average.
Yeah, that's so funny. It's cool that you have been able to build this out. I remember it was probably like 2010 as I was thinking through the model that we had. We had at most, we could do 3 weddings on a day. We got to that size. But then because we weren't like pushing our corporate work once the season was over, I had this like huge staff and there wasn't a ton of work to do with them. But we dreamed about creating like an entry level, more affordably priced wedding film. And I went back and forth. But we couldn't figure out the systems, like whatever it was that was going to allow us to be able to scale like that. What would you say was the differentiator to go from being able to do 1 or 2 on a day to being able to do multiple over the course of like multiple days?
Well, so one thing that we were lucky on is I have a business partner, so that's one. like we started with the mentality of like the studio mentality coming from, you know, music videos, and just like when you come out of corporate, you don't think like it's me, you know, as a lot of wedding filmmakers, they start and they come from more of like solopreneur photographer mentality. So it's all about them and their personal brand.
Right. Yeah.
When Jared and I started, we were just like, we came from a different school of thought. So we took that corporate studio mentality and we implemented it in business, which, you know, you go on a set, right? You bring a PA, right? So we were like, oh, I'm going to go shoot a wedding. I'm going to bring a assistant. And who, you know, I don't want to pay maximum for an assistant. No offense, assistants out there, but like who wants to learn? Oh, let's bring this high school kid. And he wants to learn. He'll carry my bags, do all this stuff. And like, we just did these things naturally over the years, like bringing on people. And like, so a lot of the people who got involved with our business, we're not primarily interested in being artists. They wanted to shoot, they wanted to hold cameras and get paid for it for a living.
Right.
They didn't want normal jobs. They just wanted to be camera operators or editors or whatever it was that they wanted to do. And so, you know, we just kind of naturally went into that over the years. The other thing that you kind of weirdly, I try to recommend this to people, and I realize like we got a little bit lucky because of the commercial, because it created all this funding to do this thing. We bought all our own equipment. Like we didn't hire people and just say like, oh yeah, bring your stuff, right? Which created way more continuity because the average shooter we had didn't own any equipment. And so they're just showing up and they don't want to drop $30K on a kit. Right. And so they just want to show up and shoot. They pick up the stuff, they drop it back off. And like, it's a good arrangement for them. You know, it's like the ultimate summer job for a college kid. You know, we have kids like in college in like 4 months making like $20,000.
Yeah. Wow.
Like that's how you scale. You make it worth someone's while.
Right. Well, that's interesting. You know, thinking about the lessons learned, if you've produced, you know, that many events over the course of time that you've been doing this work, what would you say, not necessarily for wedding films specifically, but maybe in a more general sense, what would be a couple of big takeaways or a couple pieces of advice or things that you've learned, you know, big challenges that you faced and how you've been able to overcome them? You know,
there's so many different things that we've had to overcome. I feel like we're almost like reworking the business every year.
Yeah.
You know, because the things that you used to do just don't work anymore, right?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, whether it be like people change, you know, the people walking in the door. Like I feel like a lot of the young people walking in the door now are different than when we first started 8 years ago. So I think like adjusting with talent as it comes in, and generation changes and people change what they expectations are from a workplace has been a big thing for us, just maintaining like nimble kind of things. But I think the other thing is like the biggest thing I learned from corporate is project management and how to manage projects at scale. Like I used to manage multi 6-figure campaigns for companies. And the way you have to spread out deliverables and the way you have to set all this stuff up and the way you need to actually like track this stuff, we started running our wedding film business much more like the way a marketing company does, with really, really like hard stops.
Yeah.
Like you got to be done by this. And like I have a commercial project right now with this commercial company, you know, this big company out of Europe, and we're doing a bunch of edits for them and whatnot. It's taken 6 months to get one revision out of them. I know that that's how it goes a lot of times. And like, yeah, you can put all the drop dead fees and all things like that. But at the end of the day, like I know that like they're in no hurry. Right. And I think a lot of people who run studios and in commercial let clients determine how much money they can make by not really understanding that like your cash flow is pretty much capped by how much products you can turn over in X amount of time. And so we became really relentless and really hard on like how long things can take. Like I need a wedding film done in 16 hours max for editing. If you're taking more than 16 hours, we're losing money.
Mm-hmm.
And like having these systems down and actually holding people accountable to this stuff, but also like helping to empower them to realize like, you can do this. I know you're hearing it's going to take, I heard someone talking the other day about spending 80 hours on a wedding film edit. And I was like, what are you doing? You're just throwing money in the trash.
Mm.
You know, like I want to turn over like 8 films a week in peak season. Like that's just money. I'm just like, and it's like, that was a big lesson we learned is like, you can make incredibly good work. And what's funny about our stuff is like, people will come and be like, oh, look at this wedding factory. They're a wedding factory. They're a wedding mill. And I'm like, look at the work.
Yeah.
It's better than yours.
Yeah.
We do great work. You can't slip on standards. Your work has to be incredible, but it actually doesn't take as long to do things as a lot of people will tell you. And like people will act like this is a virtue, taking forever to do something. Mm. Like, oh, I really thought about it. And that's why it took me 8 hours to cut together a 3-minute interview. It's like, no, like we've learned really quickly that like, if you just try to understand what the client expects, you can be pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in this work, you're working with people that are creative and they generally, you know, the edit is never like, we can edit things to death. It's like, there's always something else that can be done to improve or to change, to test, experiment, all of that. And to essentially come up with deadlines and say like, hey, this is what we've got, this much capacity. So if you want to experiment, you got to do it within the confines of this. And you know, I think it's smart for all of us to think through how do I grow as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, as an editor. And part of that growth is trying things. And so sometimes that's trying things with a certain project, or it's finding other time outside of you know, the time that we're allotted to test and to experiment and see what works and see what we like doing. And you know, without that, it's kind of like, well, the work's always going to look and feel the same. And you know, we know that things change and people's tastes change, and gear and all of that stuff changes the way that we create. So you know, we got to stay on top of our game, but also we've got to be profitable on these projects. Otherwise,
well, the other thing is like you'll naturally change. Like I always try to tell people, like if you had 1,000 swings at the plate, could you hit a home run? Maybe not. Maybe some of us never could, but definitely you're not going to do it with 3. You know, like 3 strikes and I'm like, I might as well just not even try. Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that like, hey, like this is as good as it's going to be next, like the next thing is where you're going to learn the next thing. Yeah. And like, just, you keep getting reps and you keep getting reps and you keep getting reps. And like organically, the projects will produce the opportunities. The clients will produce the opportunities. Like what's unique is not always you. What can be unique is the input, like as a creator. And it's like, give yourself more shots to find that dream project, that dream client. And like, you'll know it when you see it. And I have enough experience now with weddings to know like, yeah, this is like, hey, there's no shade on anyone's wedding, but some weddings are basic, you know, and like, you can't turn it into this dream cinematic wedding film, this luxury wedding product that's going to get all the viral hits. No one's crying, nothing. Okay, this is as good as it's going to be. Move on. Like, not everything has to be that. And I think a lot of people, they struggle with that because they think it's a reflection on them. And it's not. It's not a reflection on you if you're not always producing the best possible, most creative, amazing thing. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's good insight. I want to just dig in a little bit more because of your experience with all of these projects and with multiple people working on them and hitting deliverables and staying profitable and knowing your numbers. When it comes to project management, like what's your best advice for someone who would just say like, well, you know, I just know that I need to get it done. I've got 2 months before we need to deliver whatever the project is. How would you recommend somebody that isn't tracking better or isn't really digging into what does a healthy project management flow look like? What are some pointers that you would give?
So I think the first thing is you got to have a platform to work off of, and it should be as simple as possible. Like that's, I think what's important is like, don't over organize. Like, give yourself space to be a creative and to have problems, but make sure, like, if you're doing a Kanban board or like Asana or whatever you want to be doing, Trello, I know a lot of people are using that. If you're making tasks, make a task completable. Do not create tasks that are not completable. So like, don't put up there like, finish the edit. Like, people will make like, and I guess you can do that a little bit. Like, a deliverable could be a task.
Yeah.
But in general, like it also make tasks within the concept of time periods. So like, the biggest thing we do is we run more of an agile kind of workplace, which is a project management thing that I learned from working with developers. So it's like, everything has to happen within a 1 week sprint, right? So what are you gonna commit to at the beginning of the week, and then do a stand up and actually make an account of what you finished and ask yourself why. If you have team members, ask them why. But if you say, hey, finish this edit, or finish these 5 tasks, and at the end of the week you've only done 3 of them, you gotta look at that right away. You can't be like, next week. You can't just let things roll over and roll over and roll over and roll over. People don't really realize that they're creating their own backlog because they're not holding themselves accountable to actually finishing the things that they start. And the other thing I'll say is just, it's always good to have one place where every single thing that you have to do is visible. So we have a backlog of every single wedding, every single deliverable, every single piece of commercial in one place, organized by different columns, because that will sober you really quickly to look at this giant list and go, nope, can't do anymore. Like, every one of these has a time period associated with it. And like, right there, that's 400 hours of work. And I have 200 available hours of labor. Why did I commit to this?
Yeah, that's all really good. Having a place like Basecamp, Asana, Trello, wherever, to throw in your projects. Also, throwing in, each deliverable, right? Creating a task or a project or whatever you want to call it for each deliverable. Because, like what you're saying is like, make a task completable. And it might be like, the task might be send everything to the client, and it's like, okay, well, or like, finish videos. It's like, well, shoot, how many videos are there and which ones are they? And there's some that we're going to be able to finish before others. And what's your flow? Is it like send them to clients as they go? Is it, no, we wait until everything's done and you send them all at once? But creating those like tasks that were done isn't like defined, where it's kind of like, well, what does that actually mean? And like
well, even think in terms of like a Trello board, right? If you have a simple column system like backlog, in progress, done. If you have a task that moves into in progress and some of it's done and it never moves into done, you're going to have this giant list of in progress.
Yeah.
And it's just, or you're moving it back to the backlog. It's like, no, I always tell guys, everything needs to move in one direction.
Yeah.
If it's moving back, the only time it moves back is when there's a problem. If it moves left, there's a problem. If it moves right, like, we shouldn't be reusing the same task to represent different work. And a lot of people do that. And it's like, it's a disaster.
It is. And we've experienced, I've been in business for 20 years, and we've experienced, when it comes to project management and trying to stay on task, there's so many struggles in there. And a lot of it comes down to like not defining things on the front end. I remember I had one project manager that would create one task, and the task would be kind of what you're saying. It would be like, finish, edit, and send to client. two different things, and they might actually involve two different people. The person who's editing the video is not the same person who's actually going to send it to the client to, ask for revisions or whatever. And so then you would have that task kind of in this space, like purgatory space of like, what is it? Like, it's kind of in between. It's half done, so we can't complete it. And then if people aren't paying attention, it's like, what's going to move that thing forward? So not breaking stuff down in a way of like, what are the deliverables and what are the action items and who's responsible for each one and when does it due, and not doing that really can like stalemate, make you not grow, get you stuck.
Yeah, so it's going to cost you money, and it's also going to mean that you suck to work for. People don't like, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. Like, people don't like that. Like, oh, you set up like even that example, and I'm not blaming you, but if we're not giving people, like, my team knows, do not make tasks in this way, right? If I don't explain that to them, that's on me.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, that's on me as a boss. That like exactly what you said. Deliverable, like, deliver wedding film is its own task for the admin person, and like. The way you can even set up dependencies, like when edit films are all done, it can trigger that task. Like, you can make, there's a lot of things you can do, but at the end of the day, like, it's not the editor's fault if he completes all their tasks and it's done. And that makes people feel good to know, like, hey, when I do my stuff, I'm never going to get blamed because the client's not getting their film.
Yeah.
It's always going to go to the admin person, because I'm going to look at it and say, oh, you did everything right. Okay, let me talk to the admin person and ask them, like, why this didn't get delivered, because I can see that my editor finished everything and the lead editor made sure everyone was doing everything. And I think, like, that's just like sanity creating.
Yeah, totally.
It makes you happy, but teams like it too. Teams love, like, knowing, like, I always tell people this: the number one job of a boss is to create wins for their team. Like, if you can create little micro wins, not just like, we did this cool project, but like every day they're successful. Every week they're successful. Like, so many people don't think about empowering people in the way of making them feel like they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
It's all about, like, pumping their tires and complimenting them. And that's great. You should do that too. But you also need to make it easy for people to know that they're succeeding. Yeah. And I think doing a good job with project management keeps people from feeling like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, that's really good. We are working on a scorecard for, like, each employee that we have. And most recently, my executive assistant, what I built out was like, hey, at the end of each day, if you're able to do these 5 things or these 7 things, you won today. You are the conqueror, right? This should be a good day. Not just, I feel like it went well, or I feel like I did the things that I should have done, or whatever. It's the feeling can be part of it, but you could literally go through the data or the milestone that says, like, no, I did this thing. It's either done or not done. Not kind of like, I don't know. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. It's like, there's no in between.
Not. There is no try.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I would love to know, with so many shooters and editors, how are you training people? Like, what's your secret to success there?
My favorite thing. So the number one thing that we do that's maybe a little non-traditional is now, that's not to say we never work with experienced people, because we have some contractors who will come in and help out, but we pretty much have like 3 kind of criteria of people we're trying to go for. The first one would be like experienced people, and we view those people as just stopgap measures, right? They come in, they help out with a certain specific problem that we might have. We have relationships there because that does happen. I would say then the other one would be people who are experienced but have no interest in running their own business. They just want to be camera operators, or maybe they have another gig. Their full-time gig is something else, but they want to still be involved in shooting and editing or something like that. But the number one thing that we do to train up our people is we start with totally green people. And we create like a mentorship relationship with these people. I would say most of our team starts when they are in high school.
Wow.
Yeah. Like we will try to get high school people who are interested in video and want to make some money. And we'll say, hey, come to this wedding with us. All you got to do is carry bags. You don't need to know anything about cameras. You don't know anything about shooting. You don't need to know anything about editing. So people will come, they'll carry your bags. They'll get paid like, $20 an hour, which to a kid is a lot of money. And they have a good time. It's fun. You're going to parties for work all summer. You're going to get to travel to beautiful locations and see really fancy things and play with fun gear. So it's like a dream gig for those people. And it's aspirational too, because we have a ladder, right? We'll have assistants, second shooters, lead shooters for our Merriment brand, lead shooters for our Stop Go Love brand. And then maybe you can get into the Huxley film. So there's a ladder of growth that's clear. We also have editing gigs that they can do. So we'll bring in someone and say, hey, just cull footage. You want to learn editing? Come and cull footage for us. Come and do multicam edits. And then we're going to teach you creative editing and storytelling. But it's all about having like a very clear ladder for people. And not everyone goes up the ladder. We have some people who they assist and they never second shoot. We have a lot of people who second shoot and they never lead shoot. We have some people who lead shoot our more entry level brand, but they never lead shoot. But it's like, I think giving people those options and making it obvious to them that you are part of moving them up. Like, I'm your advocate. I want you to have whatever you want to have. You want to make more money? I got it. I got another way for you to do it. All you got to do is pass these milestones. And I think like we've really learned that like, if we create like a family environment and we care about the people that are working for us, that they will be loyal to you. Yeah. And it'll be a lot of fun, which I think is important to me.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's really good. I love the if you section out what your business needs, you really can create a progression, a ladder, in thinking. I think a lot of us get caught up thinking that, I want the level of our work to be up here, so I have to hire somebody that is up here. And that causes a lot of people to not be able to hire, because out of the gates, like, I can't afford, that kind of a salary. But to start smaller and to grow and mentor and train, then people get to really understand your values and buy into that and grow with you. I think that is a great approach. How are you identifying the right fit people early on? Like if you have 10 high school kids that are expressing interest, what for you are going to be the things that say, like, I think this kid might have what it takes, and let's invest in him or her?
So the very first thing is, like, for the assistant jobs, we don't really call them. We bring them on set and we just let them be themselves, and we don't really worry about it at the initial point.
Sounds so risky.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hasn't proven to be.
Yeah.
Like, because their responsibilities are almost nothing. Yeah. And we just tell them, don't talk to anyone.
Yeah. Right. That's what I mean, I guess.
Yeah. And they still do every so often, they'll still sometimes say things and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, we don't put them in situations that are going to hurt us. We have kind of, even within our assistant ladder, we have tiers. We have like a new assistant and we have like an experienced assistant, and we have gigs that we will send the newer people to. And we will, like, I'll go shoot this wedding that's way below what I would normally do just to work with someone.
Yeah.
But once they're working with us, like, we kind of have a good cop, bad cop kind of thing, where one of the owners, which is not me, is really, really, really super supportive and all this. And I'm like, let's go. Like, I tell Jared all the time, I'm like, they're like, what do you think about that kid? I'm like, he walks too slow. I was like, that kid is too slow. He needs to learn to walk. Like, we had a kid last year who's like standing there, like with one like AirPod in front of clients, and like just things like that. I'm like, if I ever see you do that again, you will never ever show up at a wedding.
I'll cut your ear off.
Yeah. So it's like, the number one thing is looking for the character that you're looking for. And the number one thing I'm looking for initially is, are you teachable?
Yeah.
do you hustle? Because that is like, weddings are all about pacing. It's all about pacing and anticipation. And if this day is too big for you, you're not ready for the next thing.
Right.
Like if everything is flooring you and you're like, oh, like totally like blown away by the pacing. So like having an idea of what your initial number one like milestone you want someone to hit. And then it's something like literally, this is like a really basic thing I would do, that in whatever you're doing with your business, just have something like this, where it's just like, I know you're ready to be left alone with a camera when I tell you to go set it up, and then I pull you aside. I'm like, hey, what's your Kelvin's at? And they go, 5,600. I'm like, oh, that's what mine's at too. Like when that person starts to understand like the things that make your image look nice, like literally it's not that hard. It's like white balance, exposure. You give me a good white balance, you give me a good exposure, I can make a good wedding film. I like it's not about the cool gimbal moves and all this stuff. It's about like that basic. When they can start answering those kind of basic questions correctly, okay, they're ready for the next thing. You know, and then I think you start getting to more esoteric kind of things like people skills and and just like, you know, the things that maybe not everyone can do. Like not everyone can do that. And I think that's what's important, is understanding what parts of your business everyone can do and making it easy for you to hire by knowing like, I don't need this all-star to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I do need them for this. Like, and I have plenty of weddings, opportunities, situations that I will not send anyone to. That I have things that only I would send myself to. Because that's just like that. I'm the boss. I'm supposed to know the difference.
Yeah, that's good. Practically speaking, do you have like training manuals or videos, or do you guys do like in-person workshops? Like, how are you growing your team? How are you training them? What does that look like?
We've kind of tried it all over the years. I find people don't read anything you give them, so it's a waste of my time. It's okay for employees, actually. If you have employees, like writing things down is more to say, I told you this, and here's it in writing.
Right.
But I think if you're working with people who are not 100% committed to you, nothing will replace FaceTime. So what we do with people is we do in-person workshops. And we bring them in, and also realizing like there's a huge limitations to anything like that. Like these people aren't going to actually learn what they need to be learning at this in-person workshop. It's just something we can reference back on. And so I think the biggest thing I found is like when you're training people, like, first of all, you need to know what the milestones are really clearly. And they need to know too, but you really need to know. And I think like what we've learned over the time is just, if you execute your jobs similarly and you make sure your team, like, so we have staff shooters and owners, those people are the trainers. Like the high end, like we have some contractors who shoot like 40 weddings a year for us, and they only shoot for us. I'm not going to send someone to be trained by them. You know, I'm going to send experienced people with that contractor because they're just making a product for me. But the staff members are trained how to train. And we talk to them about just like standards. What are our standards? Like, where is the light supposed to be placed during a toast? What is our lighting strategy? You know, every time I walk in, I'm like, why is that light directly in that person's face? I don't want anyone setting up a camera that way. I want shadow. I want depth. And just having the standards that you're reviewing, and then also having someone on the back end making sure that people are actually doing what you say. So a staff member who has your back, that's actually reviewing everyone's weddings and is coming and telling on people when they're not doing things the right way, is also really important, because then it's a mentoring opportunity. If I bring in a shooter who's like just starting and I say, hey, let's look at your footage. You know, they love that. People want to get better. And like having that like the thought of not a cynical negative view of people when they make mistakes, but a view of like, oh, what a great opportunity.
Right.
They're going to get FaceTime with the owner of this company. I'm a successful wedding filmmaker, and I'm going to sit down with them and show them how to be good. Like, you don't think some like new person is going to love that? They love it.
Yeah. That's so good. One of the big mistakes that we had made a long time ago is we wouldn't be able to jump into when we were in the middle of the busy season, we wouldn't be able to jump into some of the footage until like weeks and weeks afterward. And so we found ourselves multiple times looking at footage and we're like, oh my gosh, like what settings were they doing? And we were finding out all this stuff like weeks later.
They
and
shot
so
3 weddings in between that.
Yeah, and we're like, oh no, we could have fixed this. So that would be something, regardless of whatever kind of work you're doing, if you're not looking at your shooters or editors' work. I guess shooters would be the most important to try to nip in the bud as soon as possible so they can fix it before the next shoot. I think that's a pretty powerful takeaway, and it just brings back some terrible memories.
We review
of us
at least tacitly everything within 2 days of the wedding.
Yeah.
Weekend.
Yeah, because super helpful.
Like that's somebody's full-time job is just ingesting footage.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's a good. That's a good soundbite, and I also love the in-person. You can give somebody feedback. This is probably one of my bigger pet peeves is getting feedback from. I mean, it could be from a client. It could be from if I'm editing something and somebody's giving me feedback and they just type out and try to explain like shorten this, lengthen that, this doesn't feel right, whatever. And I guess mostly on the, like I can make this shorter, I can make it longer, but like this doesn't feel right. Like I don't, like tell me more. So getting FaceTime, having somebody alongside of you, showing footage, going through something together and getting the person's thought process, like why this might not feel right to them, what they might be looking for instead, to get somebody sharing that with their like, live thoughts versus, just fix this. It doesn't, make this better. It's like, I mean, I can rework it, but like, why? Well, what's not working? So to be able to get that time, that kind of like mentorship, I think is so valuable.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who are creating, they really don't actually know how to articulate their own values or their own branding or their own aesthetic or whatever it is. Like if you ask them to describe it, like with words, they can't. And I think like that will limit you. Like you have to learn to get language for whatever it is that you're trying to reproduce on a regular basis and demystify it. And like stop acting like it happened because you're so magically good.
Yeah.
Realize like you're following patterns. Like all an aesthetic is, all a look is your sensibilities being reproduced as a pattern. Mm-hmm. And that has been how we've been able to scale our business. Is I decided I'm not special and that weddings are all the same and people have timeless traits that they want to see reproduced. And how do we do that? And we just broke it down to our core audience and our core thing. And then we started realizing like, I can train this. I can teach this. I can articulate this. I can educate this. I can coach this. And it's not like this like esoteric kind of like, like just be better. And like, it's just not the right vibe. And just kind of like this way people talk about creating that I do understand is valid.
Yep, totally.
Like it's valid that not everything has a word. Some things have a feeling, but the more you can learn to communicate it, I think the better it is to create cohesion across a brand and to build a team. And I know a lot of people are doing their own thing, and this isn't maybe overly important, but I know a lot of people have staff members and they're trying to think of how to articulate. So I think weddings are not, I think it's a valuable skill.
Yeah, I love that, dude. That's really good. Hard, easier said than done. But if you can really practice it, you get better at it, and then you really can start to say like, oh, this is actually there's repeatability in this, and that changes the game. Jason, this has been super fun.
Thank you.
How can people find you? I know you got the podcast, you got the YouTube channel. Where can they find all the great stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, so you can either head over to listen on any podcast platform, the Wedding Film School Show. It's primarily talking about weddings and the wedding industry and the business around it, a little bit of shooting and creativity, but mostly more the business side. And then we have Wedding Film School, which is kind of one of those legacy wedding filmmaking education brands. We do a lot of wedding filmmaking behind the scenes. We do gear reviews, but with a wedding filmmaking spin, a little bit of tutorials. And we do a weekly live stream where we critique wedding filmmakers' work. So yeah, that's where you can find us. And of course, Instagram, The Wedding Film School Show.
Love it. Dude, thank you so much. Appreciate it. How do you want to leave us today?
Hey, listen, whatever you're doing, whether it be weddings or commercial work, don't limit yourself by your own preconceived notions of how you should be doing it. Give yourself freedom to actually be creative, not just with your camera, but with your business.
Mic drop. So good. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. All right, my friend, thank you so much for hanging out. If you liked this show, hit the like button if you're watching, well, I guess on Facebook or YouTube, and leave a comment. Let me know what's your big takeaway, what's your aha moment. I am here for your success. I create this content because I believe in the work that we do. I believe in its importance, and the only way that you're gonna be able to keep doing this for a long time is if you can build a business that is sustainable, where you're profitable, where you're inspired, and there's nothing worse than having crappy clients that don't value you, that aren't paying you what you're worth, or where you're not valuing what you do and what you're worth. So I am here for you and for your growth and for your success. So reach out to me if there's anything I can do for you. My email is ryan@studiosherpas.com. And don't forget about the 10X Filmmaker. Go get on the wait list unless the door's already open, and check out what it's all about by going to studiosherpas.com/10, the number 10X Filmmaker. That's all I got. Have an amazing rest of your week, and I'll see you real soon. Bye for now.